I want to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with yourself as you answer it. Is there someone in your life right now, maybe a friend, a family member, maybe someone from your church, who you have helped over and over again? Someone you have prayed for, given to, showed up for, more times than you can count, and yet somehow nothing changes. The situation is the same. The requests keep coming. And deep inside, if you are being completely honest, there is this quiet exhaustion you cannot quite explain. Because you genuinely care about this person, and you feel guilty for even feeling tired. If that resonates with you, I want you to stay with me today. Because what I am about to share is something that took me a long time to understand, and I believe it is going to bring real clarity to what you are carrying. Here is the truth that changed everything for me. Helping someone is not always the same as loving them well. Those two things can look identical from the outside, but inside, they are completely different. One produces growth. The other quietly enables a pattern that God may actually be trying to break. And for many sincere, generous, tender-hearted believers, the inability to tell the difference has cost them their peace, their energy, and sometimes even their health. So today we are going to look at 6 kinds of people the Bible warns us to be very careful with, not to judge them, not to give up on them, but to help us understand where wisdom has to guide our love. Because love without wisdom is not always kindness. Sometimes it is the very thing standing in the way of the change that person needs most. Before we go any further, I need to say this clearly before we get into anything else, because I do not want anyone to walk away from this message with the wrong idea. Every single person we are going to talk about today is still deeply loved by God, every one of them, and they should still be loved by you. That is not negotiable. What we are talking about today is not love versus no love. We are talking about the difference between love and enabling, and those are very different things. Think about it this way. A doctor who simply gives patients whatever they ask for is not being kind. They are being negligent. Real love sometimes has to say no. Real love sometimes has to step back. And that kind of love takes courage, because it will often be misunderstood, and it will sometimes feel awful in the moment. Proverbs 4:7 says, "Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom." God places enormous value on discernment and thinking carefully about where you invest your time, your energy, your resources. That is not a lack of faith. That is not selfishness. That is stewardship, and God takes stewardship seriously. So let us walk through this together. Number 1. The person who refuses correction. Let us begin here, because this is where so many good-hearted people get quietly worn down without understanding why. There is a kind of person who will come to you again and again with the same problem. Same situation, same pain, same request for help, and you listen, you pray with them. You offer counsel rooted in Scripture and rooted in genuine care. They nod, they agree, they thank you. And then weeks or months later, they are back with the exact same situation, unchanged, and sometimes worse. What is happening there? It is not that they cannot hear you. It is that they have decided, somewhere deeper than words, that they do not want to change. They want relief. They want comfort. They want someone to sit with them in the problem. But they do not want correction, because correction requires something they are not yet willing to give: ownership. Proverbs 9:8 says, "Do not rebuke mockers, or they will hate you. Rebuke the wise, and they will love you." This verse draws a sharp line between two kinds of people, not based on intelligence or background, but based on their posture toward truth. A wise person hears correction and moves toward it. A fool hears the same correction and finds a reason to reject it. Notice what Scripture is not saying. It is not saying the mocker is hopeless. It is not saying God cannot reach them. It is saying that your rebuke, your investment of time, honesty, and spiritual energy will not produce fruit there. It will produce resentment. Proverbs 17:10 adds something even more sobering. A rebuke impresses a discerning person more than 100 lashes a fool. Some people, no matter how clearly truth is placed before them, will not receive it. And continuing to pour yourself into someone with that posture does not help them grow. It simply gives them someone to lean on while they remain the same. This is not a reason to abandon someone, but it is a reason to pray quietly rather than pour constantly. Your energy is a resource God entrusted to you. Spend it where it produces fruit. Number 2, the habitual manipulator. Manipulation is one of the most difficult patterns to recognize, especially for compassionate people, because it does not always look ugly. It often looks like vulnerability. It often speaks the language of pain. And because believers are wired to respond to pain, manipulation finds fertile ground in generous hearts. The habitual manipulator has learned, usually over many years, that their emotional display produces results. Tears get them what logic cannot. Guilt gets them what honesty would not. A well-timed crisis clears away every boundary you had carefully set. And after a while, you find yourself unable to say no, not because you freely chose to say yes, but because the emotional cost of saying no became too high. Jesus himself modeled discernment here in a way we often overlook. John 2:24. 2:5 tells us that, though many were drawn to Jesus, he did not entrust himself to them, for he knew all people. He knew what was in each person. That is a remarkable statement. Jesus, full of compassion, did not give everyone unlimited access to his heart. He was not naive about human nature, even while he loved human beings deeply. The difference between genuine need and manipulation is often found in what happens after you say no. A person in genuine need may be disappointed, but they will respect a boundary. A manipulator will escalate. More tears, more guilt, more pressure, until the boundary breaks. That escalation is itself the tell. You can have deep compassion for a manipulative person. Many of them are carrying real wounds, and the manipulation began as a survival strategy in a painful season of their life. But compassion does not require you to surrender your discernment. You can pray for someone sincerely, while also refusing to be controlled by them. Number 3, the person who rejects responsibility. Galatians 6:5 says plainly, "For each one should carry their own load." Personal responsibility is not a cultural idea. It is a biblical one. Scripture takes seriously the dignity of every person's capacity to own their choices, face their consequences, and grow through them. There is an important distinction worth making here. There is the person going through a genuine season of hardship, job loss, illness, grief, unexpected crisis, who needs temporary and loving support. That is not who we are talking about. We are talking about the person who has built a lifestyle around avoiding the weight of their own decisions. This person always has a reason why nothing is their fault. The job did not work out because of someone else. The relationship failed because of what the other person did. The opportunity was lost because of circumstances entirely outside their control. There is never a moment of honest reflection, never a turning inward, never a quiet willingness to say, "I played a role in this." When you step in repeatedly to rescue a person from the consequences of their choices, you are not helping them. You are robbing them of the very thing God is using to form character in them. Romans 5:3-4 tells us that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance produces character, and character produces hope. When we short-circuit that process through constant rescue, we short-circuit the growth as well. Stepping back from this person is not cruelty. It is one of the deepest forms of respect. The respect that says, I believe you are capable of more than this, and I will not stand between you and the life God is trying to build in you. Number 4. The one who abuses generosity. I want to share something personal here, because I think it will help make this real. I once knew someone, and I say this with genuine love for them, who had a gift for finding people who cared. Whenever a need arose, and needs arose often, there was always someone nearby willing to give. And give they did. Money, time, housing, meals, transportation. The generosity poured in and was received, but never with gratitude and never with change. What troubled me most was not the taking. It was the expectation. Over time, the requests stopped feeling like requests. They felt like demands, disguised as vulnerability. And when any one person in that circle began to pull back, even gently, even with kindness, they were made to feel selfish, unloving, even unchristian. That is a pattern Scripture addresses directly. Proverbs 11:15 warns about the danger of pledging yourself without discernment. And Proverbs 19:19 says, a hot-tempered person must pay the penalty. Rescue them, and you will have to do it again. The second half of that verse is the key. Rescue them, and you will have to do it again. Generosity without boundaries does not solve the problem. It extends it. There is something worth sitting with here. When someone responds to your generosity, not with gratitude but with entitlement, when your giving is expected rather than received, a line has been crossed. You are no longer being generous. You are being used, and there is no spiritual virtue in being used. Stewardship means understanding that what God has placed in your hands is meant to be invested wisely, not consumed by a pattern that will never be satisfied. Give once, give twice, even. But when the pattern is clear, wisdom says pause, pray, and discern whether your continued giving is truly helping or simply delaying a reckoning that might be the very thing God is waiting to use. Number 5. The divisive troublemaker. This one may be the most surprising on this list, because divisive people rarely present themselves as troublemakers. They often present themselves as passionate, as honest, as the one person willing to say what everyone else is afraid to say. But there is a firm and unusually direct word in Scripture about this kind of person. Titus 3:10 says, warn a divisive person once, and then warn them a second time. After that, have nothing to do with them. That is striking language for the New Testament, which so often leans toward patience and restoration. The fact that Paul gives such a clear boundary here tells us something important. God takes division seriously because it does not only wound feelings, it fractures communities, breaks trust, and undermines the work of the gospel. The divisive person stirs conflict between friends. They carry reports from one person to another, often framed in spiritual language. I just felt led to tell you. I'm only saying this because I care. They create factions. They reframe disagreements as spiritual battles. And they leave behind them a trail of broken relationships and confused people who are no longer sure who to trust. If you give this person continued access to your ear, your platform, or your influence, you will eventually find yourself carrying their conflict as your own. You can respond to them without cruelty, but you are not required to keep opening the door. 2 warnings, Scripture says, and then wisdom draws a line. Number 6. The person who repeatedly chooses destructive behavior. This is perhaps the most painful section of this entire message, because this person is often someone you love, not a stranger, not an acquaintance, a family member, a close friend, someone whose potential you can see clearly, even when they cannot. Proverbs 26:11 captures it painfully but honestly. As a dog returns to its vomit, so fools repeat their folly. That is not a gentle image. It is an honest one. And it speaks to a cycle that many believers have watched helplessly in the lives of people they deeply care about. The person who keeps returning to what destroys them and keeps asking you to help them recover from the aftermath is caught in a pattern that your continued rescue may actually be sustaining. Every time the consequences are softened, the incentive to change quietly weakens. Every time you step in to restore what their choices cost them, the cost effectively disappears. And a pattern with no cost has very little reason to end. This is not about abandonment. It is about recognizing a hard truth. You cannot want someone's healing more than they want it themselves. And if your support has become the thing that makes the cycle comfortable enough to continue, then stepping back, with love, with prayer, with a door left open for when they are truly ready, may be the most genuinely loving thing you can do. You can grieve for this person. You can intercede for them faithfully. You can make clear that you love them and that you will be there when real change begins. But you cannot live their consequences for them, and you cannot carry their story as though it were yours to fix. Let me bring this together, because I want to make sure we leave this conversation in the right place. None of what we have talked about today is permission to stop caring. None of it is a reason to build walls around your heart or approach every person with suspicion. The goal of everything we covered today is the opposite of that. It is to help you love people more wisely, more sustainably, and in a way that actually serves their growth rather than their comfort. Jesus loved everyone he encountered. He healed, he wept, he reached across every social boundary. But he also did not follow everyone. He did not give his deepest investment to those who refused to be transformed by it. He poured himself most fully into those who were willing, teachable, and genuinely hungry. That was not coldness. That was the wisdom of a good shepherd who knows where the flock most needs tending. If someone came to mind during this message, and I suspect someone did, I want to encourage you, before you do anything else, bring that person to God in prayer. Not to look for a reason to pull away, but to ask for clarity. Ask him how he is calling you to love this person well without enabling what is holding them back. James 1:5 promises, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach." That promise belongs to you, right now, in this exact situation. He will not shame you for asking. He will guide you. And perhaps that is the final thought I want to leave you with today. Wisdom is not the opposite of love. Wisdom is what love looks like when it is rooted in truth rather than fear. And a heart that learns to love wisely will always go further, last longer, and bear more fruit than one that simply gives until it has nothing left. Take a moment to sit with that. Let it settle. If this message spoke to something you have been quietly carrying, I would love to hear from you in the comments. Your reflections help others who may be reading and going through the very same thing. And if you have not yet joined us here on Secrets of Heaven, I invite you to subscribe. We go deep here, into Scripture, into real life, into the things that matter most for the journey of faith. I believe God has something in this for you.